You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network. We are live on the Mighty 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you all for tuning in and making us a part of your day. The Madman is out today, so I am blessed and joined by the best Rams beat writer in the business. He's our Rams writer for the LA Football Network. Also going to be doing a lot more video content. The Skinny with Skinny T. Excited to get that going, but my man, Ryan Anderson. What's up, brother? How we doing on this fine Friday?
I'm doing just fine. I was out at the NFLPA Bowl practices, checking out some college prospects. It's a great place for the Rams to pull some players. They got some last year, actually, and Daniel Hardy and Lance McCutcheon, they both played in that game. So those late-round draft picks are definitely showing up in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. So we'll have coverage for that on that game on Saturday, too. I'll be there.
Absolutely. Love it. So we'll be able to pick your brain a little bit because, yeah, everyone knows the Senior Bowl, obviously. It kind of goes in the pecking order. The Senior Bowl is like the big all-star game. You got the Shrine Bowl, which you were at last year out in Vegas, which is kind of the next. And the NFLPA is like the third tier, but it's still a lot of gems, and specifically the Rams that never have top picks. That's kind of where they can pull from. So excited to kind of chat about that. And obviously the big news. So for those who don't know, this is our Rams segment of the show. So what's up, Ramley? What's up, RamsHouse? The big news, obviously, breaking today after silence, it felt like, from our Rams regarding any coaching search or anything. Well, a hire has been made as Mike LaFleur, formerly of the Niners and most recently the OC for the Jets, will be the new offensive coordinator under Sean McVay for your Los Angeles Rams. The move obviously makes a lot of sense. He was probably the favorite, which is why we heard zero chatter about other interviews. This seems like this was the target all along, and they were just, dotting T's and crossing I's, or crossing T's and dotting I's is how it goes. And so now it seems like a formality. So excited to get into it with you, Ryan. Chat about this real quick. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Make sure to head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Get you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's free money for you to play with on championship weekend or all throughout the offseason. So betonline.ag, promo code BELIEVE. Tell the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So we'll just get right into it, Skinny T. Were you surprised by the hire? Were you not? Do you like it? Was there someone else you wanted? Thoughts overall on Mike LaFleur as a new OC for the Rams?
I was not surprised. It was reported out weeks ago that he was kind of the favorite, and there wasn't a lot of chatter. I did a little bit of digging, and Brian Johnson from the Eagles, quarterback coach, was kind of in the mix as well. Marcus Brady also in the mix. And then Thomas Brown and Zach Robinson, a couple internal candidates, were kind of floated out there as well. But as we know, they don't hire internal candidates for this position. They're always looking someplace else. In terms of what I wanted, what I think about this, I'm on the fence. We can get into it in a bit, but that Jets tenure did not look good. Those were not high-powered offenses, and obviously the situation is going to look a lot different. You're going to upgrade from Zach Wilson to Matthew Stafford. You're going to be he's going to be in a offensive room with Sean McVay rather than being the lead offensive play caller. So, those are different. I was always kind of hoping Cliff Kingsbury might come around and rehab his tarnished short legacy. His reputation's a bit tarnished. But he's in a monastery or something. And a lot of people
he's enjoying life.
Something. He's trying to get something straight.
Yeah. Were you about to throw out the Korean bell down in San Pedro? Was that what you were about to say?
Oh, no, I don't even know what that is.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying not to be confused with the monastery down in Pedro before I cut you off. But no,
What are your thoughts on the hire, and were there anybody else on your list?
It's interesting because I'm definitely not surprised. What I was surprised is that, and I'm pretty sure you kind of not have to, but there's no way they could have hidden it. I was surprised that, to my knowledge, they literally interviewed no one. like no one else for this. It was basically, this was the candidate all along. I was starting to get the feeling that they may go a different approach and kind of just roll with how they did. And, after his brother, Matt LaFleur, after he left for Tennessee to be the OC, and they kind of just went with the passing game coordinator and run game coordinator, similar to how Kyle Shanahan and the Niners do it. I thought they might go down that route instead of getting a traditional offensive coordinator again. So after all the silence and the weeks of no talk about it, once McVay came back, I was like, all right, well, the Chargers are seemingly interviewing, every Rams staffer plus others for their OC position, which obviously is different because their head coach is a defensive guy. But the Rams interviewing nobody. I was like, either they have honed in on one person and that's going to be it, or they're going to go with that different model of pass game coordinator and run game coordinator. So obviously the former became true now with the hire of Mike LaFleur. And let me ask you this first, your opinion, and I'll give mine before we actually get into LaFleur and what he brings. But the Rams, I think, are champions of their staff. McVay is very prideful and grooming guys to get to the next level. But it's weird to me that all of his guys are always getting poached, but they don't promote from within. Why do you think that is? Do you think is it a pride thing? Is it he doesn't see them getting past where they are within his scheme? Like, it's just so weird to me that guys like Thomas Brown, like Zach Robinson are getting interviewed everywhere else for OCs, and they were seemingly never having an opportunity to be the OC here with the Rams.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that they don't, once it gets to a certain level, they don't really hire within. And the only thing I can think of is the old phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. You work with people for long enough, you understand where their areas of opportunity are, using some corporate speak there, where they fall short, and maybe they just look at those things and they can't get past them, and they want, they go out and get that brand new toy that they're only looking at what they can do rather than, or they're only seeing what this candidate can do. They don't recognize their shortcomings yet. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because it's just so interesting. You see guys like Shane Waldron, instead of getting promoted to OC, he's kept on as I think he was the run game coordinator at the time, and now obviously he's the OC for Seattle. You look at on the defensive guys, Joe Barry was the linebacker coach. Instead of getting promoted after Brandon Staley goes, he goes and takes a DC job with the Packers. You look at Evero, who DC with Denver currently and potentially a head coach there, could have been the DC for the Rams. Instead, they go get Raheem Morris, who I know me and you like, but a lot of the fan base is, very split on him. So it's, I don't know. I mean, to answer, I really don't. I think you may have said it best, that it's just they want guys coming in challenging the status quo instead of doing exactly what they've done day in and day out. I don't really know though.
Yeah, and you kind of see it with players too. It's like Belichick is kind of famous for asking what a player can do rather than what he can't do. And it seems like sometimes, once the Rams know what a player can't do, they don't think he can do anything. Where it's taken where it took a long time for Terrell Burgess to see time, and then he got cut. Darrell Henderson got cut. Some of these relationships sour over time, it seems like, with the Rams. I don't know if that's what it is, but there does seem to be kind of a track record there. And I'm really surprised Thomas Brown wasn't higher on their list, to be honest with you. I mean, he really came in and turned that running game around after Rashad Samples moved on. It was a stark difference. And that's the one I'm really the most surprised about. But
well, I am too, because you see him take over the running backs, do a great job, and then this year move him. They do it like Kevin O'Connell gets hired as a head coach, and instead of at the time last year moving Brown or someone else up, then they bring back a Liam Cohen, who obviously I don't think was a great OC this season. But what they did was they kind of shift Thomas Brown from running backs to tight ends and gave him the assistant head coach title, which to me that says, okay, he's now the OC in waiting, or a potential. They're just giving him more firepower to be a head coach. Cause I know they love and respect him in that building. So I was absolutely, you said it best. Like, I was shocked that he wasn't like, I thought once the OC was open, I'm like, all right, it's Thomas Brown, like no brainer, unless some other team gives him like a bag of money that the Rams won't, which no one's going to outbid the Rams. I was like, he's the next OC. So I don't know, like you said, if they see him capped in that regard, if it's the fact that he's never called plays, which shouldn't matter since Sean McVay's calling plays, Mike LaFleur, which we can kind of shift. Well, I'll get your last point on Thomas Brown, but Mike LaFleur, a guy that, okay, well, before we get to him, anything else you want to add about the whole Thomas Brown? Because I'm just shocked that he's not the guy.
Yeah, it's not about Thomas Brown necessarily, but kind of about, you think about like a CEO corporate structure, you appoint people to roles with like very specific responsibilities. And what we seem to be kind of learning about McVay is he doesn't know exactly what he wants these guys to do. But he sees something that LaFleur brings. That's you can't really go about it that way. You have to know exactly what you want, and then you go get what you need to fill that role. And this position is it seems very nebulous and ill-defined by the Rams. Looking at the criteria of things that would make McVay want to retain the coaching position, not retire, that is to say, is that, someone that can take on more responsibilities or push back on him when he's got bad ideas about wanting to throw the ball down the field, any of these things. And, that's where, I feel like the LaFleur hire has me on the fence.
Yeah. I wonder if the fact that McVay and Kyle Shanahan obviously go way back, obviously they're buddies, there's history there, but even if you're buddies, whether it's friend or brotherly, it's like you hate losing to that person. And obviously when it mattered most, McVay got the win in the playoffs last year, but outside of that, he cannot beat Kyle Shanahan. And so I wonder if some of that, not necessarily ego, but the thought process is, okay, I can get a guy that was on his staff for so many years. They run a very similar offense, but there's going to be nuances to the San Francisco offense that Mike LaFleur now knows. I had a lot of success when his brother, Matt LaFleur, was my OC before he went off to Tennessee and became a head coach. So maybe that can kind of come off. So I think about maybe it's more of having someone now on your team that was in the SF building before, and your goal obviously is winning a Super Bowl, but outside of that, it's beating San Francisco. Like, I feel like the Rams have two things on their agenda. It's Super Bowl and beating San Francisco. And that second one, they never can seem to do. So maybe that's the thought process, is here's a guy that was there that can help us achieve that goal. I mean, I could see that maybe.
Well, and that's not completely unfounded. I mean, what's interesting is the connections between the Staley defense proliferating and Shanahan's offense taking off really this year. Is Shanahan's offense takes advantage of the what I like to call the weak underbelly of the Staley defense, which is those light boxes. If a team dares you to run the ball and see what happens, and that's what we saw over the league. Is that Rodgers was capped, Brady was capped. These deep passing threats have really been neutralized in the NFL, and the Shanahan offense of the zone runs, short passing game, over the middle stuff. This is what's working against that defense. And I wrote a couple weeks ago about LaFleur as a candidate for the Rams. They're hoping that he will be to Shanahan what Staley was to Vic Fangio. McVay was getting beat by those Fangio defenses. He goes, "This is a good defense." It gets Staley in there to teach that, and they continue to run a version of that. And I think he wants to do the same thing with LaFleur. Teach me this offense, and see what happens. Let's get this offense churning again against this kind of defense specifically.
Yeah. And do you think, could you look at guys that are still in San Francisco right now? I know you've wrote about him. We've talked about him for the Rams, but also for the Chargers. Their current passing game coordinator, Bobby Slowick. Was this a move with LaFleur, you think, that, hey, is available? Or do you think he's a little bit more tenured in the system? Just because, and I think it is smart for McVay and the Rams to kind of look past the Jets situation, just because it is very different with the quarterback play and whatnot. And he was the offense guy. Now he's a subset under McVay, whereas in New York, like they have, obviously a defensive head coach. So like he had to operate the entire offense. But I think you see that a little bit, at least I do. And I'm like, man, that really like did not go well. Like he had players calling him out saying like, this guy's terrible. When you have a guy like Bobby Slowick, who's in it right now in the NFC Championship, that has the same role that Mike LaFleur had just previous years. So I wonder if they just didn't want to wait, or do you think this was just really who they wanted?
I think there's no way that McVay would request that interview, and I don't think there's any way that Shanahan would allow that interview to happen. He'll allow some other interviews to happen, but I do think that's the pride part. That's the brotherly thing there. Like, no, not right now. Yeah. So that's just my take on it. But I haven't seen his name in actually a lot of circles of interviews, which is kind of surprising to me that people aren't kind of trying to jump the gun on that one. Well,
I'm surprised. And even, I don't know if I know when you're trying to remember exactly, and you might know better, but I feel like for playoff teams, you could have done interviews before wild card weekend. And then after that, I feel like it's kind of like you can't even request, because even the Eagles coaches, who are obviously sought after, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, like I feel like I haven't heard their names at all since the playoffs started. So I think, and I should have looked this up before, but I feel like after the playoffs start, teams kind of just shut you down and say, once we're out, then you can do it.
Well, I remember I was watching the Niner Cowboy game, and D'Amico Ryans had like 4 interviews lined up, but he canceled 2 of them. So I think you can still interview. I don't know for sure though. I'll look that up though and get some clarity on it for sure.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because I haven't heard Slowick actually get interviews. I know we've talked about him and others have, but to my knowledge, I haven't known if he's gotten any. So, but it could even just be that stuff doesn't leak out. Maybe the team requested and the coach like, once we're out, we'll make it happen. And then you just don't hear about it. So, So, okay. So there it is, Mike LaFleur. So let's transition out of the positive side before we wrap up here, a few more minutes. Now that he is going to be the Rams OC, what kind of role do you see him having? Like McVay comes back, obviously. Do we think Mike LaFleur is going to have a much larger role, similar to kind of how Kevin O'Connell did, in 2022 or 2021 in the Super Bowl run? Or will it be more of a Liam Cohen role where he's kind of just a guy in the shadow that does stuff on the back end, but this is still McVay's show?
Yeah, I think he's going to have the larger role. I imagine so. Just kind of the chatter that was coming out around when McVay was mulling the retirement option. Is he was a bit overwhelmed, and there wasn't enough support around him, and that's why there was a clearinghouse from that staff. I think 8 members of the coaching staff left or were fired or didn't resign or what have you. So I think that he's trying to rebuild a bit of that 2020 magic, 2021 magic rather. So I think that's what that's the kind of role that he's looking for. And I think, he'll take over if Thomas Brown does leave. He's going to have a big influence on the run game. Obviously, that's a large part of the Shanahan offense. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And they'll want him to have a larger role to take some stuff off of Sean McVay's plate and kind of group him and get him back to success in coaching where he didn't have in New York. So
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's a 0% chance that McVay gives up any play calling.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally agree. So
just to quash any rumors about that or any speculation about that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, so now the big turn in coaching, and we're up against time already, but the big turn in coaching now, obviously we'll have to see what happens with Raheem Morris on the defensive side. It seems like his name in head coaching circles has cooled a bit. So I would predict right now he'll be back as DC, but always an outside shot that he does get a job. There's still 4 openings right now. And then offensive line. I mean, there's special teams as well, but offensive line is probably the big one. I've said this before. Mike Munchak is on the couch. He's not on any team. Hall of Fame player, probably a Hall of Fame coach on the offensive side. Would love to get Mike Munchak out here in LA if he wanted to come. So that's the big name. You got like 40 seconds. Any other coaching names that you're hearing or you'd like to see come this way, or not at the moment?
I haven't heard anything else on the offensive line, but that is the big one. And obviously they had a heck of a time trying to get that offensive line pointed in the right direction. And they're going to have a great they're going to have a much better time this year with much fewer injuries and Logan Bruss coming back. And I think they have a better idea at who can play the line this year. So I think whoever comes in is going to have an easier time than they did last year, 2022.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, that's all the time we have. We didn't even get to talk NFLPA Bowl, but the game's on Saturday, Skinny T. So let's have you back next week, and then we can get a better idea of who these Rams should be looking for kind of from this NFLPA Bowl. That'll be a lot of fun. So that's Skinny T. Find him on Twitter, RL Anderson, LAFB. It's all the time we got for the Rams segment. If you're on radio, we'll be back after the break. If you're on podcast, come back next week for all updates from the NFLPA Bowl.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.